Hey everyone, DisturbedShadow here, back to bring you a brand new album review. I know I've been away for a little bit, but I'm back to finally review a new album instead of reviewing old albums. So today we're going to be talking about the new album from Breaking Benjamin that came out a few days ago. I know it was released early, but I only just got, or it was released earlier on iTunes and stuff for streaming and stuff like that. But I'm only just now getting to review it. I've spent the last few days since it's released just listening to it and sort of forming my thoughts on it since it's been a while since we've heard any material from Breaking Benjamin, so I just want to really go through every track methodically and take a listen. So, before I begin, I just want to give a little bit of background on the album itself, because it's been quite a while since they released a new album, like I said, and there's been a lot of stuff and controversy and all this other stuff happening between this album's release and the release of their last album, which was back in 2009 when they released Dear Agony. Now, the first and most important thing is that everyone is out of the band except for Ben. It's a completely new lineup because they had all these legal issues and stuff like that, and then Mark and Aaron both were fired by Ben, and then after all the legal litigation and stuff, Chad left the band to pursue different projects, creative differences, all that kind of stuff. So then, fast forward to 2014, and they announced their return with a brand new lineup featuring 4 new members, making the band a quintet instead of a quartet as they were previously. So there's a bunch of new guys coming into the band from various other bands. On guitars we have Jasen Rauch, I believe that's how you pronounce that, who is previously a guitarist for the band Red, and he also was a contributing co-writer to Dear Agony, which was Breaking Benjamin's last album. And the other guitarist I brought in was Keith Wallen, who used to be a member of Adelita's Way. I believe that's how you say that. And then they also brought in Aaron Bruch, who's a bass player from Forever Overe, and then Shaun Foist, who is a drummer from Picture Me Broken, to create this new lineup of musicians who will be playing with the band going forward and who wrote on this album. So now that we got that out of the way, let's jump in and talk about some of the tracks and what the new lineup is doing on these tracks. So much like the album Phobia, they decide to do this intro-outro thing with track number 1 and track number 12 entitled Dark and Dawn, obviously because the album's called Dark Before Dawn. They're short little instrumental tracks. I think they're a little bit more well executed than the intros and outros from Phobia. They stand better on their own as individual songs, where those ones you kind of only would listen to them if you're listening to the album all the way through. But these are both pretty solid tracks with a little bit of guitars and drums and stuff, and some just simple vocal things. Actually, on the closing one, Dawn, they have this really cool thing where there's this heartbeat to start it, and the percussion is sort of set in tune to the heartbeat. And there's this great vocal stuff, and I believe Ben's wife actually provided some backing vocals for that track, which is kind of interesting. Now that those are out of the way, let's jump in and talk about the actual tracks on the album. The first one, track number 2, Failure, which was the first single they released off the album earlier this year. This is just a really solid track. It's got some great guitarists and stuff like that, and great soaring vocals from Ben. What I really like about this is towards the end, there's a lot of great backing vocal moments where instead of just having Ben doing all the vocals on this album, both Keith and Aaron provide backing vocals on some of the tracks, and just they have this great vocal harmony with Ben, and it just sounds so great in this song. And it's really like the two of them are singing Failure over and over in the background while Ben's sort of doing his thing. It just comes together really nicely for a great way to end that song. Track number 3, Angels Fall, which is another really solid track off the album. It's the second track they released off of the album ahead of its release. Now, what I really like about the song is that they blend in this acoustic guitar into it, which is something they've done a lot on past albums. They've intertwined that into some of their songs, but now that they have this third guitarist in the band, they can really execute that a lot better live, even though that's not really pertaining to the album itself, but it still sounds really good with the way they have all the 3 guitars blending in the leads, the rhythms, and the acoustics to just have this really great sound. And then it's another track that has really great vocal stuff happening from Ben to just give it a good sound to it. Track 4, Breaking the Silence, is one of the more heavier, upbeat type of tracks where Ben does some harsh vocals a little bit. There's not too much on this album, as it tends to be they have a few tracks on every album when the harsh vocals comes in, and it blends in really nicely with the melodic singing vocals. And there's some really great vocal harmonies where they just have layers of Ben's voice and then some of the other two guys doing backing vocals, and it just has this really great sound to it. And the choruses that just make them really catchy, and they have a really great sound to them. And it really shows off Ben's much more extended vocal range. It sounds like his vocal range is a lot more extended on this album, and he's hitting higher notes, and it really comes together on this track and just has a great sound to it. Next song I want to talk about is track number 6, Close to Heaven, which it just has a great sound to it. It sort of has these clean guitar moments in the verses, and then in the choruses there's really great vocal melodies from Ben that just soar above everything else. And there's some really cool, interesting stuff I haven't heard him do with his voice on past releases. So it just comes together really nicely for a really awesome song. Next song I want to talk about is Never Again, because it's another one where Ben's voice really stands out. And this is track number 8, and it really shows off his big soaring vocal melodies that are prevalent throughout this album. It just sounds really good on this track in particular. Track number 9, The Great Divide, which is probably one of my favorite tracks off this album. It just has a really great sound to it. It's got this really heavy riff before each verse, and then in the chorus it sort of has this really more melodic sound to it, and it really has a great blend of Ben, Aaron, and Keith's voices have this really great sound to it, and I just love the way it all comes together on this track. And then it's another track like Angels Fall where there's acoustic guitars blended in with it. It just has a really great sound to it. And there are several moments, especially when they kick back into the final chorus where it's just the acoustic guitar and Ben singing and then the two guys on backing vocals. It sounds really powerful. I just love the way their voices sing in harmony there. It just has a really great sound to it. And finally, the last song I want to talk about is track number 10, Ashes of Eden, which is probably the best song on this album in my opinion. It's so different than a lot of the other stuff they tend to do, and it just really stands out to me. It's really mostly just the simple acoustic guitar bit with an interesting effect on it, and then like a cello and a violin and stuff like that coming together with more orchestral sounding thing. And Ben's voice really stands out on this track. He's doing a lot of interesting stuff in vocal styles that I haven't really heard from him, where it's a little deeper and more, but not this sort of higher pitched sound that we tend to hear from him. It just has a really different tone to his voice, and it really makes it stand out to me. And then there's just so much emotion in this song, and they're just powerful lyrics. And the way he delivers the vocals with these soaring vocal melodies is just really powerful, and I just love this song, even though it's really different than some of the stuff they've previously done, and well, I really like that in the song. So it's a great it's not really the last track on the album because there's one more and then the outro, but it's sort of the climax of the album in my opinion, where it's just really powerful, and I really enjoy that song. Anyway, that wraps up the tracks that I wanted to mention. Now we'll talk about the band members in particular. First, we'll start off with Ben on vocals, since he is sort of the main focus of this band, and he always has been. And this is very much a vocal-driven album. I know I mentioned that in my review of We Are Not Alone that I did for its 10-year anniversary last year, where Breaking Benjamin is very much a band that's focused on the vocals, and the instrumental side of the band sort of always takes a backseat to his voice and the way he sings. And it's just, his vocal melodies are so good, and his lyrical content is pretty consistent all the way through. It's just, he's doing an amazing job, and he's definitely the most important part of this band. I mean, obviously the band's named after him, but his voice is sort of the defining thing of Breaking Benjamin, and without that, it wouldn't be Breaking Benjamin anymore. So I just love the way he sounds, and he's doing an amazing job even after this 6-year hiatus of not really performing anything. Well, not really 6 years, but 6 years since their last album, and they did a couple tours before they ended up going on the hiatus when all the band members left, obviously. So, like I said, he's doing a great job in this album. Now, let's talk about Ben and Keith and Jasen on guitars. There's just so many good guitar parts, throughout the whole album. There's not really any of these riffs or melodies that really stand out, like on other bands where it's a lot more focused on the instrumentals themselves. but the guitars just come together really nicely for great moments where it's blending in with melodic lead playing and like sort of crunchy riffs, and then the acoustic guitars blend in from here and there. That really produces a really great overall sound that blends in nicely with everything else and really is pulled back more to allow Ben's voice to stand out and shine. And it really does that throughout the whole album. So they're doing a great job with the guitar work here. And then Aaron on bass. There's nothing too crazy on bass. It's mostly just following along with the guitars, but I love how it sounds in the mix. It's turned up perfectly loud enough that it's not overpowering the guitars, but you can hear it all the way through. Even if you don't have really good speakers or anything like that, or headphones, you can always hear it. And then when you do have like the great speakers I have with the subwoofer and stuff like that, it just sounds so great in the mix. I just love the sound of the bass. So he's doing a good job on bass, and he's turned up perfectly to the right level to give it that perfect bass sound that I always like to hear. And finally, Shaun on the drums. There's nothing too crazy or complicated on drums, but like I've been saying with all the instrumentals, they're always taking a backseat to Ben's voice, because that's just how Breaking Benjamin is. And he's doing a great job on the drums. You always the perfect, a little bit crazy stuff when it's a bit more upbeat, like on Breaking the Silence, on a more pulled back and simplistic on a song like Ashes of Eden. So he's doing all the right things to produce the perfect blend of percussion and the more melodic instrumental stuff. So it all comes together really nicely. And I really like what these 5 guys are doing on this album to produce a really high quality album that shows that Breaking Benjamin is still in the game, even though they haven't released an album in so long. Anyway, that wraps up my talk with band members, and let's go on to my closing thoughts. Breaking Benjamin is one of those bands that always takes the approach of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it really does work for them, because they've been one of the most consistent bands. They don't change their style up too much, but it's okay because everything they release is really high quality, and it's always really good. It's not ever subpar, even though they don't tread new waters, try to do different things. But there is a moment on this album, like I said, Ashes of Eden, where it's very different from what they've done before, so I give them props for trying a little bit of a new thing. But I like that even with a completely new lineup, with only one of the previous members still in the band, that they still managed to sound very much like Breaking Benjamin. And not just because Ben's voice is so unique, it's that the style of all the instruments and stuff is still very much in line with what Breaking Benjamin has done with the past. And I give them props for not changing to try and get new fans and stuff like that, where they just really focus, we're going to make an album that sounds like this, we're going to do it well, and it's going to turn out really nicely. And they do that consistently, and this album fits perfectly in with their past work, and I look forward to seeing where they go from this with the new band members. And I'm interested to see how the dynamic changes when they perform live. I probably mentioned this before, but Breaking Benjamin was the first concert I saw. I was co-headlining with 3 Days Grace, and Flyleaf opened the show. And they just did a really good job, but some of the songs they couldn't reproduce live because they obviously have these acoustic guitars blending in, and the other guys really didn't do the backing vocals. I know Ben mentioned this in an interview that with the addition of an extra guitarist and having the 2 guys doing the backing vocals, where it can better represent the stuff on the albums live. And he kind of came up as like an arrogant prick in the interview, but the point still stands that with these guys in the band, they can much better represent that. And I'm interested in seeing what they sound like live now with this new lineup. But anyway, I don't want to keep rambling on, so I'm going to wrap this interview up. I will say, if you're a fan of Breaking Benjamin, you will enjoy this album. And if you're just a fan of hard rock in general, this is a good album to check out. If you're looking for something new and different, you're not really going to find that here, because Breaking Benjamin, like I said, is a band that always produces the same sort of basic style every time. And they're not really going to change that up. But it's still a really solid album, and it's a good listen, and I definitely recommend checking it out. But until then, I've been DisturbedShadow. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more of my reviews, be sure to hit the subscribe button. But until then, I will see you guys in the next video.